From the very first George Romero flick in 1968 to the early 2000s, everybody had a game plan for the zombie apocalypse. Back then, the slow, shambling undead didn't seem all that scary, but as the saying goes, everyone's gangsta until the zombies start sprinting at you. In 2002, 28 days later, flip the script on your slower moving zombies you could just walk around and introduce the fast, savage infected. Not technically zombies, but still kept within the lane of someone you once knew wants to eat your face. That one change made the genre terrifying in a whole new way. And sure, we still got slow zombies in movies and shows after it, but when filmmakers wanted to make the dead scary, they made them run. Then came 28 Weeks later in 2007, not a game changer like the first, but still a solid sequel. And now we're here in 2025, and director Danny Boyle and writer Alex Garland are back with 28 years later, a long-awaited return which will be kicking off a whole new saga to this franchise. So now that we're finally back 22 years later, after 28 days later changed the game, is 28 years later going to be a worthy addition to the rest of the franchise? Hey, what's good everybody? It's your boy, DatChickenWang, part of the Chicken Wang Gang crew, and I'm here to give you today my honest thoughts and opinions about a movie that I've been waiting for years at this point. Everybody, this is my review for 28 years later. So as the name implies, this movie takes place 28 years after the Rage virus devastated the UK. We're introduced to an isolated Scottish community living on Holy Island. This island can only be reached by a narrow path of land only accessible during low tide. We're introduced to Jamie, played by Aaron Taylor-Johnson, his wife, Isla, played by Jodie Comer, and their son Spike, played by Alfie Williams. As part of a coming-of-age ritual, Jamie takes Spike to the mainland for a hunting run. There they find that this rite of passage may be more than they bargained for, as they encounter infected that have evolved and have developed new ways to survive with the passage of time. And honestly, that's just the beginning, because from there the movie starts shifting gears hard. What begins as a contained survival story suddenly expands into something much more grand, but with how big of a shift it is, it can turn people off. So I'm just gonna say that the trailer for 28 Years Later, chef's kiss, one of the best trailers I've seen for a horror movie in quite some time. And it really set a tone for the movie for about the first 40 minutes of it, because when you go along, this movie ends up feeling like 3 different movies crammed into one, and that can make for some pretty great tonal whiplash if you're just expecting a thrill ride from beginning to end, but you don't really get that. I mean, this movie does have some horror, very terrifying moments in it, especially one in the beginning where Jamie and Spike are being chased by an infected, and you have the northern lights illuminating the sky, and you see them walking or running through this water as this thing's chasing after them, and I was on the edge of my seat. I couldn't believe what I was watching. It was beautiful, but it was also insanely terrifying. So shortly after that scene, and shortly after the hunting rituals concluded, a series of events happen that put our characters at odds with each other, and it's going to end up changing how the rest of the movie plays out. So when Spike and Jamie were on the mainland, Spike saw a fire in the distance at night, and Jamie pretended like, hey, I don't know what that is. This is just some fire. Who knows what's going on over there? But when word gets out to Spike that a doctor might actually be at that location where the fire is going on, he gets the idea to take his mother over there to get a diagnosis. But Jamie refuses to help and just won't let it happen. So Spike takes matters into his own hands, takes his mother away from the community, and they set off on the journey themselves. That's right, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, hot dad Aaron Taylor-Johnson, is removed from the equation entirely, and Spike is now the main protagonist of this film. With Spike now carrying the story forward, you might wonder, how does a 12-year-old hold the weight of this movie on his shoulders? And I'll just say that Alfie Williams has a very bright future if this is any indication of what he's capable of. So this horror movie using a child as its main protagonist through a majority of the runtime was quite ambitious, but they actually pulled it off quite well. This is definitely Spike's coming-of-age story, and we see him go from a child who desperately seeks his father's approval to realizing that his father might not be the great family-oriented man we initially thought he was. And this shift motivates his journey, and watching it unfold through the eyes of a child adds emotional weight, especially in the film's more somber moments. Like, this almost feels similar to the journey that Loki went through in God of War Ragnarok in a way. Aaron Taylor-Johnson, in his limited screen time, makes a strong impression. Despite his personal flaws and mistakes, you never doubt Jamie's love for his son. His bond with Spike felt sincere, similar to Joel and Ellie dynamic from The Last of Us. Even early on in the movie when Spike and Jamie are out hunting, Spike screws up at one point, and Jamie's like, "Hey son, it's okay, you're doing good, I got your back." He has a lot of proud dad energy early on, and that really won me towards his character. But the cracks start to show when you realize he doesn't like being pressed by Spike regarding certain subjects, and he definitely is not the best kind of husband. Jodie Comer takes on another major role as the mother of Spike, and while I initially thought she wasn't going to have too big of a role in this movie, she really held her own and has a lot of memorable moments with her and Spike interacting on their journey together. And she's also having to portray a woman with memory issues, so she has to really sell those moments where her sense of clarity come and go. And there is one particular scene in this featuring her and an infected person, and this scene might not work for some people and it might come off as goofy, but I think that she actually made it work. And this mostly has to do with her being so close to an infected person, and it just adds the tension because they're so unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen next. Then there's Edvin writing as Eric, a Swedish NATO soldier who shows up midway through the movie. This character adds levity, heart, and some much needed world building. So Eric pretty much explains what the world outside of the quarantine zone has been like, since the outbreak has pretty much been contained everywhere else that it happened at this point for a while. And him trying to explain modern day first world problems to this boy and his mom, who's he realizes is going crazy, was funny to watch. And there's an interaction Spike and him have involving an iPhone that genuinely got me and the rest of the theater laughing and smiling because the innocence of a child. And oh boy, Ralph Fiennes. This man plays the role of Dr. Kelson. I can't really say much about this man without spoiling a lot of the build-ups, since early on people describe him like he's a myth. Someone collecting bones and building strange monuments, but for what purpose? The people on Holy Island make him out to be a strange, possibly unhinged man. But when our characters do eventually encounter him, he changes the trajectory of their journey in a way that was so unexpected. And Ralph Fiennes, he just nailed this role. And with the next movie in this series directly referencing his location, I look forward to seeing more of him because he was a major standout in this. Now, something else that might throw some people off about this movie is the stylistic choices that they make and how they shift so much. I mean, some might call it sloppy editing. I wouldn't, because I think the editing throughout this movie is pretty solid. But there are stylistic changes and tones that just shift throughout visually, and it may be jarring to few, but it's also very noticeable. The first half has a very deliberate aesthetic. You'll see what looks like archival or vintage footage edited alongside current day scenes like townspeople practicing archery or tending to daily chores. There are slow pans over murals and wood carvings or snapshots of their isolated life, all of which help ground you in the rhythm that this community has going. And then once we get to the mainland, then we're introduced with a new visual style, and that is we are viewing the infected through what looks like night vision goggles but with a red tint to them. And they're intercut with scenes of Jamie and Spike just exploring the mainland, and they kind of go back and forth with this, but it gives the feel that the infected are actively stalking them, and it really gives them a more animalistic and feral vibe, which I found genuinely unsettling. And then there are the bullet time shots. Yes, that Matrix-style camera pan during kill sequences makes an appearance here. It was a very popular type of camera trick back in the early 2000s, especially music videos, so seeing it pop up in a modern film like this is definitely a choice. Some people are gonna find it distracting or goofy, but I actually like that the film wasn't afraid to experiment a little, and it gave some otherwise brutal kills a little extra flair. So it also should be noted that a lot of those visual styles we saw early on kind of start to drop off at around the halfway point of the movie, and we settle back for a more traditional cinematic look. And that's not to say that anything's taken away from it. The visuals remain strong. Like, we get these wide sweeping shots of the countryside with our characters crossing open fields that feel both peaceful yet ominous in a way, if that makes any sense, especially during the daytime. Like, it almost feels meditative, but I almost feel like I could witness a whole bunch of infected just popping out of the bushes and just start chasing after our heroes. So another thing I should mention about this movie is that you're going to see a lot of nudity in it. And from a lore perspective, that makes sense because the outbreak happened decades ago, so if the infected were still wearing clothes, they should be in shreds at this point. So, totally checks out. But something I didn't know was a lot of the nudity was done with the use of prosthetics, and that was for a legal reason. When you're filming with a minor like Alfie Williams, you can't show male or female genitalia, so you need the use of prosthetics. So that makes sense. Although, something that didn't make a whole lot of sense was one of the alphas has a massive dong, and while I know Spike has seen some crazy stuff in this movie, and as if this alpha wasn't already alpha enough, dude has a straight up full-size Pringles can dangling between his legs as he's cutting wind trying to get to Spike. So I just thought that was funny in retrospect. So then we have to talk about the ending because, wow. So after all the tension, all the drama, all the emotional moments that we experienced with Spike on his coming of age story, we get to the last 3 minutes of the movie and pretty much the movie starts out with the Teletubbies and it ends with the new Teletubbies who are being led by Jimmy Seville, and they all just got out the pub and they want to go cause a brawl in the streets. It was nuts. I've never seen such a crazy tonal shift in a post-apocalyptic movie ever, but I ain't even mad because this had me cracking up from beginning to end when it started happening. So, hey, they got a new director taking the helm of this movie when it comes out January 2026. And maybe this last minute detour was kind of give us a hint of what's to come. So, hey, this movie already subverted my expectations for what a sequel to 28 Days Later could be. Why not keep it going and see how crazy we can get when part 2 comes out? When 28 Days Later came out, it shook up the zombie horror genre in ways that we are still feeling the after effects from today with movies like Train to Busan, or even in video games like Left 4 Dead. Running zombies are here to stay, and that's 28 Days Later's doing. 28 Years Later, however, doesn't shake up the foundation the previous movies created for it, but it expands on the world building and makes for more interesting stories that can be told in it. And that's all I really wanted from this movie, so as it is, I really enjoyed 28 Years Later. But I can see where some people might think that this movie pulls a bait and switch because of how amazing of a tone that the trailer set. But if you can come into this movie with an open mind, you're still going to get the scary and suspenseful moments, but you might also get a little emotional and shoot, you might even be laughing by the time it ends if the tonal shift doesn't completely take you out of it or piss you off. Like, I saw it in a crowd full of people, we were all happy, but I can totally get how the ending's not for everyone. But hey, I enjoyed 28 Years Later very much, and if you check it out, I hope you do too. And with that, I'm going to give 28 Years Later 8 out of 11 chicken wings. Even though it's in the 28 Later series, it does try some different things with this movie, and while it may not land for some, I definitely dug it, and I'm looking forward to part 2. This movie showed that the franchise can go beyond being only horror. It can also be somewhat philosophical and sometimes meditative, and still not lose its touch while incorporating amazing cinematography to make these moments really shine. And that's my review for 28 Years Later. Hoping you liked it. If you hated it and think I had a bad take, please let me know in the comments. Or if you just want to say hi in the comments, please hit me up. I was hoping to get a review for Megan 2.0 out next week, but I'll be out of town for a bit. Hoping to drop that and the Tornado reviews sometime soon, so stay tuned and I hope to catch y'all for the next one. Yo yo!